Hello and welcome to my proposal for residential cold energy storage. To begin with the basic idea, as you can see on the screen, it's really simple. You could do this at home. I don't think there's a lot of engineering behind it. So the essential idea is you have an ice maker within an insulated box. Said ice maker produces ice cubes. Those ice cubes fall down into a box and stay there because it's inside an insulated container. They don't melt or melt slowly. You just extract the energy from the ice cubes to cool your house. And the energy that's released, the heat energy, is dissipated into the surrounding air by the condenser on the top. I don't think I need to explain much further, except for the motivation. For the motivation, I have two concepts. Because the first one is, if you look at an example of the weather data that's representative of my area. I don't know how it is for you. Probably if you live in a city, it's not that steep of a curve, but let me explain. So you see about 5 o'clock in the morning, you have up to 13 degrees centigrade. This is not Fahrenheit. It's degrees centigrade, and that's quite cold. For example, a good strategy is to set your AC to run in the night, because the temperature difference between in the house and outside the house is much smaller. Therefore, you need less energy to cool your house, and less energy consumed means lower electrical bill. The problem is that you need to super cool your house. That means it's below a comfortable temperature. Let's say your comfortable temperature is between 20 and 23 degrees centigrade, but you are running the AC for the whole night and you wake up and it's freezing cold. I mean, you do that to save a buck, but it's not really that comfortable. My idea was, how about we store that cold energy? I mean, cold is the coolness is the absence of energy, but how do we store that coolness? So the first idea was just make a big tank of water and cool that water down with a simple refrigerating system. Problem is, if you want to cool down a large body of water, you need to disturb the water, so you need to pump the water around. So you have a pumping system that is submerged in water. They tend to break more often than other kinds of machinery. I mean, the less moving parts you have, the better it is. The other part is, if you don't want your water to freeze, you can't make the refrigeration heat exchanger too cold, or your heat exchanger would be freezing up and blocking it from circulating more water. You can mitigate that with antifreeze in your water, or not cooling your refrigerant lines down too much. But if you don't cool them down very much, then you can't transmit enough or extract enough energy from the water to cool it down, so your efficiency is limited. And as you can see, the cold phase in the night is only a few hours. And the other problem is water is incredibly heavy. You would need a lot of it if you have a house that's larger than your average garden hut. If it has more than 2 or 3 rooms and you don't have first grade insulation in your house, you need quite a lot of energy. Cold storage for several 30 or 40 kilowatts of coolness, let's say, and that's just not feasible. You would the tank would be too large. Water is extremely heavy. You couldn't put that in every basement, because if it's too heavy, it might break your basement's foundation. That's not feasible, and you don't want to dig up your whole garden just for a big tank of water. To mitigate that, I found out a few years ago that, and I will quote an article from ESA, the European Space Agency. So to quote, to melt ice of 0 degrees centigrade to water of 0 degrees centigrade requires as much energy or latent heat as, for example, heating water of 0 degrees centigrade to about 80 degrees centigrade. Ice can therefore be quite stable if only limited energy is available to melt it. This article is explains how ice is very important to store and retain coolness on Earth for the climate. But in our case, we can use this incredible cold storage capacity for our users. So the problem would be, if you wouldn't use an ice maker or a similar device, that ice has two properties that make it hard for this to work in a swiftly manner. The first is ice expands when it transitions from liquid water to ice. If you do this in a container, in a fixed container, and then you just have a big body of water and you try to freeze it from the outside, or even if you try to freeze it from the inside, it expands, and you would need a complicated system so that your container doesn't explode. If you ever have put a water bottle made from glass into your freezer, I think you've seen the principle. It will explode and you can't do much about it, and it's a hassle to get all the glass shards out of your freezer. So yeah, the other idea is that you submerge, let's say, a copper pipe or a copper coil into water and then pump a sub-0 degrees centigrade liquid through that copper coil, and what's gonna happen is ice is forming around that copper coil, and ice has insulating properties. You wouldn't be able to build an igloo and have a fire inside an igloo if ice didn't have insulating properties. Yes, an igloo is made from compacted snow, but that's a different story. What I mean is those insulating properties will work against you. So you need to separate the ice creation from the storage. And an ice maker is exactly that. And thing is, ice makers are readily available. You can buy them almost everywhere where refrigeration equipment is available. So in theory, you could build this device that I'm showing here in some capacity even at home. And that's my whole argument, that this contraption is so simple to build. You don't need a whole new field of engineering. You just need to use the existing ice maker technology and combine it with an ice cube storage. And another interesting fact is that if you have a body of water and have ice cubes lying in that water, usually has it around 0 degrees centigrade. So it doesn't usually get colder. I mean, that's the reason why ice swims on top of water and the liquid water is beneath, so you can use that closed loop energy transport into the house. That's just a representation for a copper coil that's on the bottom of the waterproof ice container, and this will always be submerged in liquid water, and that liquid water will always be at the lowest point of 0 degrees centigrade, almost never much cooler. And I think that's about it. The only thing, if you want to increase efficiency and you already have a hot water system in your house like we currently do, you can add a thing like this. So the output of the condenser, which will be warm air, you could feed that into one of these hot water storages and increase efficiency, because you want the coolness for during the day, because this ice maker will run during the night, as I've shown, because it's cool in the night, and the the hot air that's produced by the condenser will feed into the hot water heat pump. I don't know what's the exact word for it in English, but it feeds in the hot water heat pump and re-extracts that energy to heat up your shower water. So you, I mean, even if your home is cool, you will still want to take a hot shower, I assume. So that's about it. And it's just the separation of ice creation and ice storage that makes this so simple. And the existing technology of an ice maker, I'm pretty sure if you're an engineer and you sit down for a while and make several prototypes, you can come up with a much better solution, like creating larger chunks of ice to increase the efficiency, because if you just have small ice cubes laying around in this container, they are not as space efficient as they could be. Like, let's say if you have the technology to grow a large chunk of ice from the bottom up, if you have that technology and you can make this cheap enough, I mean, go for it. But the thing that I'm showing here is you can make this at home with a bit of ingenuity, and if you're willing to take the risk. But it's really simple, and it's that simplicity that I think is really nice. And I think that's about it from my side here. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. And if you're a company and you build one of these, the idea is free of charge, but only if you give me one to test. I really want to test this thing, and I don't have the time or the technical skills to build one. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching and listening, and have a nice day. Bye.